All right, it's Monday, March 30th, and it's almost the end of the first quarter in 2020. And wow, has it been a first quarter? Um, I have not posted any videos in terms of financials or the economy for a little bit since all this craziness started, mainly because, there wasn't a whole lot to add to what was going on. I certainly had my views, but I didn't feel like I needed to share it with everybody just quite yet. Um, Although I will say that on a few Facebook pages, groups that I belong to, we discuss things pretty freely. And within my own small group of people that I know, we've talked a lot about it, of course, just like everyone else has. Um, so what do I think about all of this now that a little bit of time has passed and there's a lot of thought about, well, are we at a bottom? Should I move back in? Um, is this one of those dead cat bounce? What should I do? Um, and the honest answer is that I really can't tell you what to do. I can tell you my thinking and what I did, and maybe that will inform you into what you should do for your own situation. So for me, I'm probably down year to date, I would say about 22% thereabouts. So pretty much tracking the S&P 500, maybe a little bit lower than them than I would like, but there's a couple of reasons for that. So all in all, it's not terrible, only because if you think about 2019, we had if you count dividends, it's over 30% return, right? So we basically just wiped out our returns from 2019. At least for me, I did. Compared to where I was at the same time last year, overall in my portfolio, I'm down like 10 grand. Which, considering the size of the portfolio, it's literally nothing. I basically just gave up all the gains from 2019. Not the contributions, that because it's comparing it for the 1 year period back to March 30th, 2019. And I've only contributed, a little bit by then. But anyways, that's an aside. So all in all, big picture, I don't think we're in as bad a situation financially as a lot of people are worried about. Could that change? Could fundamentals, take a dive with new data coming in? Of course, but I think that there's a lot of panic right now without people stepping back and taking a look at the big picture. And the big picture, we lost a year basically because we had a stellar 2019. So for me, not a terribly big deal at this point. Like I said, things can change, but at this point, not a terribly big deal. One thing I did that kind of helped me and kind of didn't was that back in mid-February 2020, I moved 30% of my portfolio, took profit and moved it to cash. Well, mostly. And this is why I'm actually a little bit like a percent behind the S&P 500 for the year. So I did move 30% of my portfolio and sold it to cash. And then what I did was I bought a money market fund with 1/3 of that, which is 10% of my portfolio. 1/3 of that I bought some REITs, thinking that there was a couple of reasons. I wanted to have some diversification into different asset classes, and I didn't have any real estate in my portfolio, so I bought 10% REIT, and the other 10%. I bought the XLE, which is the S&P Energy Select Sector. So that's all of the big oil companies, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Royal Dutch Shell, whatever, Valero, things like that. And I was primarily attracted to XLE because the yield was just crazy, right? There was a special dividend that was paid in December that caused the yield to go to almost 9% on cost. And that was just really, really attractive. Considering that I had felt even early in the year that 2020 was going to be like either a flat year or a lackluster year. I didn't think it was going to go down like this crazy, right? I thought it was going to be like relatively flat or maybe 10% down, not as much as we've experienced. But that was my reasoning for going with XLE. Now, of course, since then, things have really gone to shit, right? No one knew that Saudi Arabia and Russia would get into this oil price war thing, which they did, which blew up all of the oil companies. So that 10% move from my winning stocks to XLE was was a failure. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Do I regret it? Not really. It's just that the timing was just terrible. Overall, I still think that XLE energy companies are still a good buy, and maybe even a way better buy now that they've gotten the shit beat out of them. And they really have. I think that this is an overreaction to what's going on. So a couple of things on energy, and then I'll move to my point about REIT. There are a lot of people who had poo-poo my buying the oil companies. This price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia aside. The reason that they were poo-pooing it was that they said, well, the future is going to be renewable energy. All these electric vehicles, solar, wind energy, blah, 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 is going to make oil obsolete. And you're foolish to buy oil. And my thinking on that is that, yeah, I agree. I think that, the renewable energies will replace fossil fuels. They absolutely will. There's no doubt about it. The problem is that folks who are thinking this think that it's an immediate thing, like it's going to happen overnight and it's a switch. And I don't think so. I think that, it's going to be a very gradual transition to renewable energies. And if you look at how much renewable energies make up all of the energy we use, globally, it's not that big, and it's going to take a long time for things to move that way. If you think about it, all the shipping that we do, ship containers and railroads and planes and whatever, right? You can't run those on renewable energy. You can't have an electric airplane or an electric ship unless you're, nuclear. And even those types of ships are mostly military, right? Not civilian use. So that makes up a huge portion of our energy consumption, right? Just all the transportation and shipping and whatever to support trade and commerce. It's just huge, and it's not changing anytime soon. I don't think we're ever going to see a plane that is electric based, period. Maybe a toy one, but yeah, it's not going to happen. So even though we will move to renewable, there will be a lot of things that still runs on oil. Will that be the fossil fuel oil? Maybe not. Maybe there'll be biodiesel or something like that they're going to use for ships and trains and planes, and maybe the cars move to EV or whatever, and regular household consumptions would move to clean energy from wind or solar or whatever. But even then, that's decades out. So my whole point in thinking on this with the oil company is that yes, it will change, but there's plenty of time to earn a nice return until it happens. So I'm not worried, am I going to hold it forever? No, maybe 10, 15 years and I'll reevaluate. But that was my whole reasoning for going with XLE and the oil companies. And lastly, the move to the REITs. I had a couple of reasons for it, one of which was just to have a different asset class in my portfolio from equities. And having diversification is good. What I didn't count on was that, we would have this reduction in interest rate at such a fast pace, right? I already thought that interest rates overall was very low, and it is. And didn't really think that they would have gone that much lower that quickly. And it turns out that with this COVID-19 whatever, by the way, I'm saying that because I don't want it to impact the monetization of my videos here, but that aside, I didn't think it would have had that vast of an impact on interest rates, is my point. So my REITs have taken a huge beating. I mean huge, probably down 60%, something like that. So considering that I'm only about 1% behind the S&P 500 year to date in returns, given that my energy companies have just done shitty and my REITs have completely fallen through the floor, I'm actually doing okay. Part of it was that I had decided maybe a week ago to move all back in with the cash that I did have, which was like 10-12%. And I basically bought the NASDAQ index, QQQ, and I paid, what, $169 a share? 169, 15 cents or something like that. And since then, it has gone up, 12-15% from that level. So that has certainly helped. But yeah, the energy bet and the REIT bet had really hurt me in the short term. I still think that, maybe for REIT, if someone were going to ask me, should you buy REITs right now? I would say, I don't feel as good about it. I'm not going to lose sleep over the decision I've already made in my own portfolio. I'm going to be fine. But for anybody that's wondering, I would say, I'm not feeling so great about it, as a new purchase. I'm certainly not going to sell what I have. So there's that. Now, what about the energy? I actually think that the XLE ETF is a great buy right now, given that everybody is so bearish on oils, right? And it's gotten the crap beat out of them. I think more so than they deserve. A lot of it is that people don't know how long this price war is going to go, and so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of a panic on oil companies. But I think that's one of the reasons that you want to buy it. I mean, it's on freaking sale, right? So I think oil companies are a good buy. I just got into them a little bit earlier than I should have. Aside from that, going forward, what's going to happen? I don't know. The only thing I know for sure is that we're going to recover, right? People have told me, well, that's stupid. I mean, I've had people say that. They say, you don't know, this time it's going to be different. We've heard that before. And they say, you really don't know how long it's going to take. It could be 10 years. And my response is that, yeah, it could be. It's highly, highly unlikely that it'll be 10 years. But it could be. I don't think that's the case, and I can't convince them. I've shown data going back to 1950 where the longest bear market, recession, correction, whatever you want to call it, has lasted no longer than 2.5 years before it recovered. And this was the tech crash of 2000 to 2002. It took 2.5 years, so 930 odd days for it to go from the bottom back to where it started from, which is not that long. I mean, 2.5 years, and that was the longest going back to 1950. 70 years, that's not that long. So do I think it's going to take 10 years for us to recover? I don't think so. Could it happen? Well, yes. But like I said, I think that given what we've seen, it's not likely. And for people who say, well, this is just completely different from what we've seen before and blah, 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 yes and no. I every time I hear that, I hearken back to the other saying where people will say that the more things change, the more they remain the same. And I think, yeah, there are things that are slightly different here. This is a pandemic, it's a health issue, whatever. But I just feel like, the world is going to learn how to cope with this. So at the end of the day, let's say we're 2 years on, we look back, I don't think we're gonna, say, wow, that was crazy, we were all wrong. We're gonna learn some new things, certainly, but I think it's gonna recover faster than a lot of these pessimistic folks are thinking. As for me personally, 2 years ago, I threw out a number where, in another video where I basically said, what's your number? And that question was asking, how long do you think you'll take in years before you get to a place where you're financially independent? And at the time, I said my number was 12. And last year, with the market going up the way it did, I was feeling like I was, 7 to 10 years away, right? Which, if it was 7 years, it would put me on a faster track to hit my target. And 10 years would have me exactly on track. Looking back now, in terms of what's my number, 2 years on, even with all of this craziness, I'm still about 10 years away. I could even be 9 or 8 years away. I don't think I'd be 7. We did lose a year, so I can't be that bullish. But for the most part, I think that I'm on track. On my projections, in my own personal projections, I'm using a very, very conservative rate of return with dividends of about 8% on average. And I think that, in the long term, we're going to likely get that over time. Maybe this year it's going to be, down 10, and next year it could be flat, but the year after that it could shoot up, 20%. So for me personally, I feel like I'm still on track. Knock on wood. Do I have any wood around me? I don't. But that's where I am. This is a little bit longer than I was hoping to do, but since I haven't done a video for a while, I figure that this is something that some of you may be interested in seeing. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Have a great Monday. Tomorrow's the last day of the first quarter. I'm still feeling super optimistic, and I think that as the weather gets better and all that, we're gonna figure out a way forward from all of this craziness. So have a great Monday and rest of your week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.